through verse 11. I chose to include the psalm even though the text that I'm going to expostulate is in Corinthians. But there is something that is always present in subjective renditions of what's going on in one's life. That's the wonder about the Psalms. I think that's my single favorite reason for the Psalms, and that is getting an insight to how people express themselves when they're struggling to get through life. It's a wonderful way, because many times you look at people from the outside and they have this iron curtain kind of a expression, but then you don't know how the streams are flowing on the inside. And God has been kind enough to us to allow us the disposition and attitude of those people that we regard as in relationship with Him. He has allowed us their expression. And I want you to see the ups and downs, the vicissitudinous disposition that the writer has. He seems to be vacillating, he's slipping, then he's catching himself, and a little bit like Job. Sometimes he seemed to be on the edge, then sometimes he got strong, and a little bit like you and I. Sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes on the ground, floundering around, trying to be found. The psalmist says, I love the Lord because He hath heard my voice and my supplications. Because He hath inclined His ear unto me, therefore will I call upon Him as long as I live. The sorrows of death compassed me, the pains of hell got hold upon me. I found trouble and sorrow. Then called I upon the name of the Lord. O Lord, I beseech Thee, deliver my soul. Gracious is the Lord and righteous. Yea, our God is merciful. The Lord preserveth the simple. He must be talking about me. I was brought low, and He helped me. Return unto thy rest, O my soul, for the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. For thou hast delivered my soul from death, mine eyes from tears, and my feet from falling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed, therefore have I spoken. I was greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. What shall I render unto the Lord for all of His benefits towards me? I will take the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul, in making a presentation of the gospel, he says, if I would read, I would begin at verse 3, if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. For we preach not ourselves, but Christ Jesus the Lord, and ourselves your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, hath shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. I want you to look at somebody like you're angry with them and tell them, I'm still alive. The question that plague me is in trying to simply put my foot on what it is that keeps some of us going in the midst of great cataclysmic difficulties and all manner of wars and fights. What is it that keeps you getting back up? What is it that causes you to hold on in times that seem to be difficult for so many and for literally all of us? There has to be something that keeps us from capitulating, even though many times we have come to the edge, we have felt like throwing in the towel. Somehow, we didn't throw it in, and we bounced back. And somehow we gathered enough strength to come out of what would seem to have been the very end. And then many times, of course, we defied the opinions of others who had already written us off. And they themselves are now astonished at our recovery because they just knew we would be through the last time around. And it seems that there has to be a difference between those who falter and stay down and those who get up and try to brush themselves off and keep on moving. I am sure that it has to do a great deal, according to what I'm seeing here, it has to do with what and how you believe. Because in faith, there has to be expectation, because hope is integral part of faith, and it's having the ability to look at a circumstance or situation and just believe within your bosom that no matter how rough this thing is, it's not going to take me out. Amen. I will not lose my mind. I will not lose my mind. I will not go crazy. I'm going to maintain where I am, and I'm going to hold on to my ground. Not because of something external, but because of something that God has placed within my heart. It is here then that we believe the gospel, and the gospel seems to unleash the powers of the enemy in a way that we've never experienced it until we decided to be different. At the point where we said, you know what, I'm not going to let my circumstances dictate how I feel every day, but I'm going to find solace and peace within the confines of the gospel. And once you begin to believe God in a manner that defies your circumstance, seems like the negative turns up the heat to see whether or not this is Memorex or it's real. It's when you step out and begin to speak in positive and speak with certainty and assurance that God will deliver, not based on how ugly the circumstance is, but based on my relationship with Him. And now the powers of the world seem to come after both the carriers and those who are recipients of the good news of Jesus Christ. Well, Paul points out, and he makes it clear, that the gospel is glorious in itself. One writer says, I quote, it's the true character and excellence as a revelation from God, and of God was not apprehended or recognized, unquote. It seems as if most of the philosophical writers, the systematic theological fellows, are all certain that it is not in what you recognize, it is not in what you see or you perceive sensually that decides whether or not you will stand or fall. It is what you have in your relationship with God, which is a revelatory circumstance where you don't see God, but you know he is present. And that revelation is what? That revelation stimulates your faith. And it is your faith that dictates your disposition in spite of everything that is being thrown. When we talk about the gospel from that point of view, it is true that it has nothing to do with the nature of the gospel. It has nothing actually to do with the mode of its exhibition. The Son is always the Son. It's not the Son's fault that the man is blind. If the man is blind, it doesn't matter how the sun is shining, he just can't see the light of the sun. And there's a distinction then between those who keep getting up. They must see something, and that seeing is not sensually perceived, because I'm getting up out of a circumstance by any cognitive intellectual assessment should have wiped me out. But yet still I get up and I stand up again, and I'm ready to get back in the fight. I will say this. I remember some years ago, a sister called me from Carolina, somewhere on the East Coast, and she called and she said, Bishop, we would like the church to pray for me. And I said, well, what's going on? She said, I just got word that my daughter was killed in a car accident, and I called my mother. And when my mother heard that my daughter was dead, she dropped dead on the phone of a heart attack. She lost her daughter and her mother within an hour. And yet still, she is calling the church. It seems to me that something inside of her must have realized that in spite of this catastrophe, I still need God. Now, many people would have fallen and not gotten back up because they would have said, there must not be a God if I'm going to lose my mother and my daughter within an hour. You see, the difference is when you have a revelation, when you have a relationship with God, you do not lose or destroy or walk away from that relationship simply because of something that's happening on the outside. There is a difference. I feel it here. It is not that you're not shaken. It is not that you're not sometimes vacillating. It is not that sometimes you don't feel like quitting. But it's something that has turned in you that keeps you from walking away from an internal strength because of an external circumstance or situation. You just believe that in spite of it all, I will get through this. I'm feeling better now. You see, Paul speaks to the Corinthians, and he tells them in another passage that for those of us who believe, God, we can navigate in circumstances where other people think it's foolish. Somebody thinks it's foolish for me to be praising God in the middle of everything I'm going through. Somebody is wondering, how can he lift up God in spite of all that he is facing? It seems as if they said to Job, Job's wife said to him, you ought to just curse God and just die. And Job said, get away from me, foolish woman. Foolishness to them that perish. There's a difference between those who know God well enough to be able to face what life dishes than those who are going to capitulate on anything that comes their way. And so the sun then is still the sun if a man's blindness hinders him from seeing it. And you are not supposed to see God. You've got to believe God. And the challenge to believe God is when everything around you is contradistinctive and antithetical to what it is you're holding on to. I've noticed in the text, what he says here now is this blindness is among them who are lost. And he's saying now, one writer said, the lost are those who are in a state of perdition and are certain to perish forever, unquote. A man's faith is not a matter of indifference. When you believe something, you cannot be indifferent about it. I believe it, and my whole life then, and my whole will is brought to bear upon what it is I believe. No matter how challenging it is, that's what I believe. No matter how rough things are, that's what I believe. And that's the driving force that keeps a man getting up, because once he has a revelatory experience with God, he is now on another plane. An atheist cannot be saved, and there's no such thing as a good infidel. If you don't believe, I am told, he that believeth not is damned. And that's where Satan wants to take you. He wants to cause your circumstance to be so horrific that it turns you from believing God to walking away from God. And when you walk away from God, you literally walk away from your inner strength to counter the things that are happening all around you. The reason they are lost, who do not see the truth and the excellence of this gospel, is because the God of this world wants to control their thinking and the mechanics that go through their mind. But when I believe God, I'm not controlled from the outside, but I'm controlled from the inside. And as long as I have this inside mechanism working, you cannot stop me from achieving what I have been given as a vision from God. I feel something pushing me. You see, he wants to keep you blind. And if you notice, it says, because in them, in whom the God. Now, Satan, the God of this world, exercises power over the world. And unbelief then gives him the power to manipulate you any way he feels like. He wants you just to be a part of everybody else, and that is cry when he says cry, and be broken when he says be broken. He wants you to look at your outside circumstances and respond like everybody else. And I think he's a little sick when he's thrown everything at you and you still rise up out of the ashes and give God glory even for where you are. Because it will not always be this way. I need all the help I can get. Amen. You see, this unbelief gives the God of this world power, and the unbelief then leads into servility. Yes, that's what he'll make you servile, because you don't believe in your own capacity to rise, and you don't believe that you can move to the next level. So because you don't believe in God, you don't believe in yourself, because God is not outside motivation. God is inside inspiration. And anytime you believe in God, you step up not with arrogance but with confidence that in spite of how rough it is, I am a personification of God's representation of faith. And I refuse to sit here and let you manipulate me with your concepts when I have a revelation from God. Oh, it leads to servility. It leads to being controlled and manipulated. And oftentimes when you lack faith, you are controlled by things that are less than you are. And that's how Satan wants. He wants you under when you should be over. It leads to fear, and it leads to worry. When you don't believe, you begin to forecast negatively, and that's nothing but worry. Just worrying about everything. It ain't even happened yet, but you worrying about it. And worry, you can't enjoy your life with fear. And the Lord said, I need you to believe, because I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And oh yes, and yes, life is sometimes up and sometimes down. I went to the hospital. I had some heart problems some years ago, and I laid there, and the thing went up and it went down. It went up and it went down. And maybe it should have just been going like this, no, if it flatlines, I'm gone. To let it keep going up and let it keep coming down, up and down. And then I understand that that's what life is all about. Life is just another heartbeat. It goes up and it goes down. But if you bounce the ball real hard and throw it down real hard, it's going to pop up a little higher the next time round. I feel, wake up, Patrick. Unbelief then leads to fear. And when you deal with fear, you've got to understand that fear cripples and it immobilizes the vessel. Anytime you're afraid, you've got the drawback spirit, and you're looking for somebody else to take charge and be in control. But God put you in charge of your own life, and you can't wait for somebody else to make it work for you. You got to get up and push back the circumstance and stand up and shake yourself off and tell the devil, you hit me with everything you got, but I'm still alive. I'm still here. And this unbelief leads to blindness and ignorance. That's why the God of this world wants you to be ignorant about what you do. And he wants you to be ignorant about what can happen and what he can do to you. When you have faith, you defy him in every instance. Because once I believe God, I ain't thinking about no witch and no sorcerer. Sometimes Satan can have you so nervous and so afraid. Somebody put something on my husband and something been put on my children. They ain't acting right. The devil is a liar. Can't no devil put nothing on you from cross town if you don't believe. When I believe God, I shut off the devil's work. When I believe God, I shut down the devil's work. It's belief in God that says no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Something's pushing me now. It didn't say it wouldn't be in business. Whole lot of stuff in business but don't prosper. It ain't a matter of Satan not trying. It's a matter of him not having the victory. Because I believe God. When I look at this, the text, you will understand further that Satan's control is their unbelief. He cannot stop you from believing, but he can control you if you don't believe. Augustine and Chrysostom tries to make this verse say that God hath blinded, but it is not God, not so. It's unbelief, that gives Satan power over the mind of the individual. Because anytime I believe, I'm stepping on ground that Satan cannot walk on. He cannot invade me from the inside. He cannot get in here with my God and me. But he messes up the outside. After all, it's his world, and he messes up the outside so that I might begin to become intimidated by what's going on, intimidated by my boss, intimidated by my friends, intimidated by my family members who decided for me that I'm not going to be anything. The devil is a liar. It ain't what's going on the outside that's holding me, but it's what's going on the inside. And when I have faith, I release the inside to capture capture what it is that God has ordained for me to do. His superior intellect, his superior intellect, his psychological ability to manipulate man, which he has been doing for 6,000 years. Ever since we got here, he's been messing with us. But there is one thing that gets him, and that is my belief. When I believe God, I defy him. Can I preach like I feel it? When you deal with satanic and you deal with the devil, you understand this. In the angelic world, there are different hierarchies of angelic powers. They are not all equal and the same. There is a hierarchy. If you remember the story of Daniel when he was praying and he asked for a revelation of a particular vision, and the Lord, the answer came back later, of course, that for 21 days he was fasting and he was seeking this answer from the Lord, and the Lord dispatched the answer the first day that he prayed. But as the answer was on the way, an angelic power was bringing it from a divine place, heaven, another demonic angel who was more powerful than the one who was bringing the message stopped him. And then God had to release Michael, the archangel, to overpower the angel that stopped the original angel on his way. Now let me just take it a little bit further. This angel that finally got to Daniel, when he spoke to him, Daniel fell on his face. Now everybody in here just say hello. Now that's how one angel sounded. He sounded like all of us together. Now can you imagine an angel walking up to me and opening his mouth and sound like somebody at the Staples Center full of the seats? Well, after I run, I'll fall out. You've got to understand now that this angel was powerful enough to put Daniel on his face simply by opening his mouth. And yet there was another angel who stopped him. And yet there was another angel, Michael, who stopped him. Now Job, the book of Job says that he was speaking now. Michael, the archangel, is speaking to the devil. And the Bible said he dares not make an accusation against Satan. He got it like that. He just that bad. But Michael looks at Satan and says, "The Lord rebuke you." I feel it here. Now I heard the Lord say to you and me, resist the devil and he will flee. It's somebody in here. Oh God, my faith in God. That's what I need. I need to get up with my faith in God. And when I step out on the day with faith in God, every demonic power is hovering around. But you can't touch faith in God. And the reason you're still alive is you still have your faith that no matter how rough it is, God's gonna make a way somehow. He's intellectually superior, but he can't get by my faith. That's why Fritch and Bill Roth would reverse this, and they would say, whose mind Satan blinded hath so that they believe not. And again, I disagree with Fritch and Bill Roth, because this gives Satan power he does not have. He cannot stop you from believing. Anytime foolish hearts are darkened, it's because they have their inexcusable folly was the ground of their judicial blindness. You step away from God, you step into the dark. That's all it is. But as long as you're in the light, the devil can't harm you because you can see him coming. My faith has brought me discernment to understand that you ain't nothing but the devil. I got to preach this thing in here. Forget them witches. They can't do nothing to you. I don't want to hear it. God rebuke them if you see them. Get out, get behind me, devil. Can I take it? Can I take it further? You see, the key is your faith. Jesus said that he could not do many mighty works in Nazareth. And the reason he couldn't do any mighty works is because the people did not believe. Now, I want you to think about that statement in context of our conversation. If God could not do many mighty works because somebody didn't believe him, now tell me what a witch can do if you don't believe her. All she's trying to do is play with your mind, just like the devil want to control you from the outside. But throw any portion you want my way. Long as I don't eat your cooking, I'll be just fine. Oh, I feel a little church coming on. Give somebody a high five. Say, don't eat the cooking. That's it. Watch what you eat. It is Satan then that has always wanted to confound us.